Good evening and welcome to this edition of the In Focus Candidate Forums on Whitewater Community Television, WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Glad you're able to join us for this 90-minute session as we talk to the Republican candidates for Wayne County Sheriff. First of all, I need to thank Tyler Vanderpool for sitting in for me last week as I took care of some outside business. He did a great job from everything I understand. And remind you that next week we'll have another In Focus Candidate Forum, and I'll be joined by more guests. If you have not had a chance to hear from a number of the candidates, I want to let you know that there is going to be a candidate forum taking place in Cambridge City. That's actually coming up on Tuesday at 6:30 at the Cambridge City Public Library, 600 West Main Street. These gentlemen will all be there, candidates for Wayne County Sheriff, Wayne County Council District 3, and Indiana House District 6. The evening will feature some light refreshments. Moderated will be there. We will be recording that and showing it to you later. So if you haven't had a chance to talk to the candidates, get your questions asked, it will be a question and answer session. It's hosted by Hometown Media Group, the Western Wayne News, and the Nettle Creek Gazette. We appreciate them including us in that evening. We talked about being able to register to vote. Too late if you haven't done it, but voting is actually going on. Early voting is taking place now through May 7th. You can do that at the voter registration office at the Wayne County Courthouse, 301 East Main Street. Voting hours are there on the screen. If you need some more information, 973-9304. Early voting at the vote centers is going to begin on April 30th and run through May 4th. That's 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Locations: Coleman Center, First English Lutheran Church, Hagerstown New Testament Church, the Golay Center, and the Coleman Center will also be open for early voting on April 28th and May 5th from 10 to 3. The clerk's office will also be open that day. We'll have this information up on both our government and community bulletin boards. You'll also find it on our social media site so that you have a chance to know where voting can take place. And then on Election Day, you see the list of where you can go vote throughout the Wayne County. The only change we really want to highlight is the second one on the left, Mount Olive Baptist Church. That is a new location taking the place of the Townsend Community Center, which had been a long place that you've been able to go vote. Obviously, there's some issues with the Townsend Center, currently closed. So Mount Olive Baptist Church, 1108 North H Street, will be that location for voting. And then I mentioned next week our final In Focus Candidate Forum, and it will be with candidates for Wayne County Council District 3. We'll start at 6 o'clock, only go for an hour that evening. Sitting in with me that evening will be Millie Martin Emery from the Hometown Media Group. She's working with Western Wayne News and the Nettle Creek Gazette, and she is going to sit in with me for that hour, and we are looking forward to that. Tonight, we are talking with Republican candidates for Wayne County Sheriff. Now, one thing I do have to mention, because I've been asked a little bit, don't you like Democrats? Because I haven't talked to many so far this election season. We have done this for a number of years, and it is the same thing. We are doing contested races, and we did talk to the Democrat candidates running for Congressional District 6. That is really the only contested Democrat race at this point. There will be more races contested, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians in the fall, and we'll have them all here together. So it's not that we have anything against the Democrats. There are just very few contested races on the Democrat side of the ballot. So that's why you're seeing Republican candidates for various offices. Election night, we will be inviting some candidates in that you have not heard from, both Democrat and Republican, because they were not in contested races. If they decide to come, great. Otherwise, we'll sit here for 2 hours and just kind of stare at each other as we wait on the results to come in. Our election night show will begin at 6 o'clock. Brian Ballinger is joining me as a member of the Wayne County Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and you're new as far as running the Issues and Advocacy Committee group.
Yes, just took over.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And our candidates who have been waiting for me just to shut up and let them speak, Todd Barker, Donnie Benedict, Randy Redder. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for being here. We're going to open this up by giving you each about 90 seconds to tell a viewing audience whatever about yourself you want, background, personal information, whatever. Todd, we'll start with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Brian, Eric, for having us. My name is Todd Barker. I was born, raised, and lived in Wayne County all my life. I'm graduated from Northeastern High School. I continued my education at Ball State University majoring in criminal justice. For the past 29 years, I've worked at the Wayne County Sheriff's Department. I started in 1989 as a volunteer for the jail and then hired in the jail as a jail deputy. I am a graduate of the Indiana Jail Academy. 5 of the 6 years while working in the jail, I've been a corporal or a sergeant in a supervisory capacity. For the past 23 years, I've been employed within the enforcement division. I've been a patrolman, a field training officer, a detective, a crimes against children specialist, a polygraph examiner, an investigative lieutenant. I am very involved and engaged currently in our community. I'm a huge youth advocate. The years of my experience with the Sheriff's Department, as well as being dedicated to our community all my life, is why I'm passionate to be your next sheriff.
Don?
I'm Donnie Benedict. I'm a lifelong resident of Hagerstown, Indiana. Graduated Hagerstown High School in 1986. I then went to Vincennes University and achieved an associate's degree in criminal justice law enforcement. I then returned back to my home community to take a position with the Sheriff's Department, where I was a jail supervisor, supervising inmates and staff, and then had the opportunity to move to the Richmond Police Department, and where I've been serving there for the past 28 years. My current assignment is head of the Office of Community Engagement. My umbrella of control spans the Youth Services Division, Traffic Safety Division, Community Policing, and partially responsible for the reserves assignments throughout the community. My training, we've got a list of training that we could say we've done. I've continued my education at Indiana University East. Early on, many years ago after I got out of school, I completed the Earlham Institute for Executive Growth. I've completed several courses down at the Southern Police Institute in Louisville through the University of Louisville. I've been a certified public information officer for the City of Richmond. I'm a crisis negotiator for the SWAT team currently. I've been a canine officer and a coordinator as well. I've had 2 different assignments as undercover in the Drug Task Force throughout my career, and I too have been tasked by the chief to develop a community engagement program with the police department where we are rebuilding and revamping our youth services division. Very active in the community. I've served on and serving on several nonprofit boards throughout the community, including the Wayne County Boys and Girls Club, Wayne County 4-H Association, and Sunrise Incorporated. I've also been serving currently as a town board representative for the city of Hagerstown. I got caucused in about 2 years ago to fill a position of a counselor who left, and have been sitting in that position ever since.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Randy Redder.
Thanks, Eric and Brian. Appreciate this opportunity. My name's Randy Redder, and I'm a 30-year veteran of law enforcement. I'm the 4th generation from my family to live here in Wayne County, and in fact, we've been a part of Wayne County for more than 100 years. My wife and I, Jackie, we've been married for 26 years, and we have one daughter, Sydney, who goes to one of the community schools here in Wayne County. I graduated from Ball State University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I'm an honor graduate from the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. As I worked for the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, I've earned different ranks and through merit promotional processes, and again, currently serve as a merit lieutenant for our department. And I'm the enforcement commander who's in charge of the entire law enforcement operations for our agency. As I work my way up through the ranks, I have gotten the opportunity to work in or with almost every position in our department. And this has really given me a clear advantage to understand our department and to become the next sheriff. I've taken this opportunity to educate myself, and I've got an extreme passion for this profession and to be your next sheriff. And I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. Want you to know before we start the questioning that, yes, Brian and I have jotted down a few notes and we've got a few questions, but this is an interactive discussion, so feel free to give us a call. You see the number on the screen, 973-8587. You can send us a question through Facebook Live, or you can send us a question through Twitter at WCTV Info. And I think Brian's going to open up with the first question.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. I appreciate your willingness. One thing that I've noticed in reading your bios and then listening to the three of you give your introductions, you're very similar in age. You're all three lifelong residents of Wayne County. And it sounds like, from a layman's term, it sounds like your experiences are very similar. So I'm hoping that our questions tonight and from our viewers will be able to help you demonstrate your strengths, what you hope to be able to bring to the county. So my first question is, I'll preface this by stating that it seems to me that most residents in Wayne County are satisfied with and feel like the Sheriff's Department is run well now in terms of policies and procedures. But having said that, what would you like to see done differently, and what would be your first and foremost objective? Not that you would undermine what Sheriff Kappa has tried to do, but how would you build upon it?
I'll open with Donnie.
Well, I would move the Sheriff's Department into a model of policing called intelligence-led policing. It is a model that I've been trained in extensively. We've instituted it at the police department. And basically what we would end up doing is developing actionable intelligence and information on prolific and persistent offenders. We would reach out and engage the community to let them know what we're doing. There's been many times that I go out and I speak to community groups, and I always ask, what is the number one problem in our community? Of course, everybody knows what that response is. It is drugs. My next question to the group that I ask them is, what is law enforcement doing about it? No one seems to have the answer. They don't know exactly what we're doing about it. But we're not going to be able to solve these problems in the community. Law enforcement's not going to solve it unless we partnered with these folks. You can ask them, what are we doing about seatbelt tickets? They know what we're doing about seatbelt tickets. They know what we're doing about DUI, but they don't know what we're doing about the number one problem. And that's where I would change. We would engage every community throughout this county and let them know what our mission is and how they can partner with us to help us. And that's an important role in an intelligence-led policing model. We look at reducing recidivism rates in the jail. We go out and we target the 6% of the offenders that are causing 60% of the crime. Because when you start taking those people out of the equation, your crime rates will drop. When your crime rates drop, social harm diminishes. So we need to disrupt criminal activity by that process. And there are many spokes in that wheel, from offender interviews to actionable and intelligence gathering and breaking down informational barriers between law enforcement agencies and within the agency and moving forward that.
Randy?
Thank you. And Brian, you're absolutely right. You know, the public does appreciate the job that our Sheriff's Department does. And as I was talking about earlier, I've moved up through the ranks in our department, and one of the roles that I was in was the detective sergeant. And we started in 2012 with some strategic planning models to address specific issues for the community and to address certain crime problems, or traffic safety was one of them. So there was public safety concerns as well. And we started with these strategic planning models to find out what strategies we could develop to address these specifically. And one of the things that we dealt with was the crime objective, which encompassed burglary and theft issues over the course of a 4 to 5 year period now. And we've developed and utilized several strategies to address this. And I'm proud to say that we managed to decrease a combined decrease in burglary and theft by nearly 40%. And it's actually, if you combine 2017 figures in with that, it's even dropped even farther. So, you know, I don't think that intelligence-led policing is the magic bullet. I think it takes more than just that. Intelligence-led policing I'm familiar with. It's a kind of a top-down strategy that the police determine what issues there are, and then we tell everybody else how we're going to take care of the problem. I believe in blending that with, and I think it's important to use that in part, but I think that, and I believe that community-led policing or community-oriented policing is also an integral part of that solution, because that starts with the community. We take input from the community, and the intelligence and the relationships that we build there, and we blend that together to develop these strategies to address it. And again, proud to say that the numbers that we have been able to produce are very impressive, and I think it's a great service for our community.
Todd?
Thank you. I think what the public really needs and wants to hear are our children safe? And school safety is a huge concern. I can't say we can't go into the schools and prevent critical incidents, but we can give our officers the power, the knowledge, the technology to reduce that critical incident. By going into our schools, when we address something, we should have the power to know the layout of the school. Many of our officers have never been inside of some of our county schools. They've come from outside the agency. It should be mandated that each officer knows the layout of the school. They need to go in together with the principal, with the resource officer, and see the layout of the school. I did this exact same thing last month with the guys I work with. Northeastern, I got a hold of the school resource officer and the principal, and we led through the school. He showed us the concern points and the doors we can gain access to. We should be in every school, not even the high schools. We're a college town. We need to go to college campuses as well. With that being said, when we go to a school, we all have computers in our cars. We should have the layout of the schools at a press of a button. We don't have those. Very simple fix. You're responding to a critical incident, pull up the layout of the school. We know where we're going. Something very, very concerning is at least one of our schools, we walk into it, we're in a dead zone. We have zero communication. Our radios don't work. How can we reduce a critical incident if we have no communication? How can we reduce a critical incident if we don't know the layout of the school? We should have those to us, and that's one thing that would be a priority of mine.
I agree with Mr. Barker that communication inside the school is an issue, and we're working on a resolution for that. I'm co-chairman for the School Safety Commission, and these are the types of problems that we do talk about quite often, and we've helped the schools over the last several years. I've been an active member of that for about 6 years now, and we do share floor plans and communication issues and stuff like that, and our EMA does have many of the floor plans for the schools actually at the touch of a button, and we can pull them up in our cars. So it's really a benefit to us when we have that availability.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WCTV Channel 11. We're speaking with candidates on the Republican side for Wayne County Sheriff. We are taking your questions, 973-8587, also on Twitter and Facebook. That information is there. Quick question. Obviously, when you're talking about manpower, cars, equipment, the budget that you will have if you are the Wayne County Sheriff is large, one of the largest within the county, if not the largest in the county. Talk to us about your experience handling and administrating numbers of that size.
Sure, I'd be glad to answer that. Currently, our budget is about $7 million. And that is a very large budget, and it is one of the largest in the county works. And that's delegated. About 2/3 of that goes to the jail operations, and then 1/3 of it goes to enforcement operations. Currently, I'm in charge of, as the enforcement commander, in charge of the vehicle fleet, which encompasses everything from purchasing vehicles to equipment, dealing with insurance claims, tires, oil changes, everything when it comes to that. So Sheriff Kappa and I, as well as the administrative staff, frequently talk about budgetary issues. We decide, what is feasible. We're always contacting different resources to try to find some of the best purchases for your tax dollars. It's very important that we're good stewards of your money. And one of the major projects that we have coming up right now is the purchase and allocation of in-car cameras, and that's going to be a substantial cost. It's pretty routine for me to deal with numbers like that, and we need to be very, very conscientious on how we spend that money.
Todd?
No matter who becomes sheriff, the budget will already be set. We'll be inheriting the budget that is already set for us.
Correct.
Over the several years, the budget does not change that much. We always have the salaries, or you have to look at it as several different small budgets, like Randy said, for the vehicle fleet, for the salaries. There's several different small budgets. We have actually two different budgets. We have the Sheriff's Department budget enforcement, and we have the jail budget, two separate budgets. So the budgets, the spending does not change that much. There's already a precedent set from the previous years of where the money goes, how much money is needed. And the county council knows that as well. That's why our budget's already set. There's a precedent set of how much money we will need, how much money we'll spend. And by most times, we give money back to the county. The reason we give more money back is because we're understaffed. We always have openings, so those salaries go back to the county. So when we come in, we already have a budget. We have precedents already set of where the money goes, so it's not going to be, and we have great people already on staff that have already handled these. I don't go out and I don't pay the bills myself. We have other people do that. The important part is put people that you can trust, people you know are good, into those positions and let them do it.
Well, Eric, I've had the fortunate pleasure of sitting on town council in Hagerstown, and with that came the responsibility to the taxpayers as the oversight and management of a town budget. Also, I've been a part of the approval process and setting the budget. So with that experience, I'm sure a learning curve of learning a budget for the Sheriff's Department would be well within my realm of capability of doing so relatively smoothly. Identifying funding streams, overseeing the management of the budget throughout the year for the town, and then the whole process of setting a budget, creating the budget, then we approve the budget, and then we oversee that throughout the whole year for the entire town. So.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We are taking your questions, and we do have a question that came in from our viewing audience, so if we can bring that up. Our drug problem is increasing and has for the entire 8 years. How will you be any different? Our drug problem is increasing, has been for the entire 8 years. How will you be any different? Todd, this one starts with you.
Sure. And right now, everything is labeled as the opioid crisis. And the reason it's labeled opioid is because the drug of choice, heroin and fentanyl. And the reason it's brought to the forefront is because people are overdosing and dying from these drugs. If you take the opioids out, we have a huge drug problem. Right now in our recovery centers, the addiction is more people are being treated for alcoholism and meth. Opioid is third on the list. And right now you're seeing a trend going from opioids to meth. So we don't have a opioid crisis, we have a addiction crisis is what we have. So how are we going to handle those issues? Supply and demand, we're never going to get rid of the drugs. Drugs will always be here. 1971, which we've all been around to remember that, President Nixon declared war on drugs. Okay? The drugs are still here. The supply will always be here. We have to reduce the demand. We have to reduce the addictions is what we have to do. So first of all, something we need to do is law enforcement is trained drugs arrest. That's our mindset, drugs arrest. What we need to do is have a mindset also is they are people. They have an addiction. They have a disease. We have to be armed with the information. How can we help them? A perfect example of this is I was downtown Promenade. I saw someone who I recognized I began talking to him, knowing that he was an addict in the past, didn't know what he was up to now. He opened up to me and said he is tired of being on drugs. What can I do? Where can I go? And I asked him why, knowing the risk that you could OD, why do you do it? His answer is, it's much easier to get high than it is to get help. Pretty powerful. Easier to get high than it is to get help. He said, where can I go? I happen to have a friend with Meridian. I called her. We started the process right then to get him in-house treatment. Okay? Meridian, a free resource. Most officers don't have the knowledge, where can we go to get people help? There's one person who we started in lieu of arrest, which he'll get back out and do drugs again. We get him help to get him off the addiction. So we have to reduce those. Our law enforcement officers should be armed with the information. If somebody wants help, how can we give them help? There's 211 system most people don't know about. You call 211, what is your addiction? Go through the prompts, it helps you out. We have a website called Open Beds. You go on the Open Beds website, all the recovery centers in Indiana list them and shows what beds are open. And people don't realize that Wayne County, most of the people being treated are not from Wayne County. You know, they're coming in from other counties to be treated here. They're going to whatever bed is open. And people say, well, I cannot afford the rehab center. There are several different ways for that. There are paid, there are insurance, and the Meridian is free. So there is free treatments out there. But we as law enforcement officers have to give them that information to get started.
Well, I think there's many spokes in that wheel, as Todd touched on a lot of those, and it is truly an addiction. All three of us are seeing that out here on the street. We are talking to people that look just like us who have addiction. And you can look those people in the eye and you can ask them, why did you go to that house and buy that particular drug knowing that it had the elephant tranquilizer in it? The guy looks me in the eye and says, I just must be stupid. That's not the case. He's not stupid. He is addicted. And it is an addiction. And the problem we have is we need to find an effective way to really try to reduce the recidivism rates in the jail for the drugs. We need to find and research a way to offer them help in the jail. You have a captive audience of 300 people. And yes, there's a lot of controversy on this, but if a guy wants the help, if an individual wants that help, and that is available to him while they are in the jail, either serving time or just waiting trial, why can't we capitalize on that and do a better job? So when he does come out of jail, he's not going out to Walmart and stealing again or breaking into your house and coming back. Because each time a person leaves and goes out and commits another crime, there's a victim. So we have repeat victimization. You have repeat offenders. And as we move forward with that, we have to find better ways. I'm not saying there's a magic solution to this, but if the program isn't working, let's look for a program that does. Let's be open. And to do that, you have to track your recidivism rates. You have to know. There's no sense in starting a program and say that you help X number of people get a job if you don't know how many of those people reoffended and came back into the jail. If you don't know those numbers, and if those numbers are telling you that the program is good, you need to expand it. If the program is failing, then you need to change it. But you have to find a baseline somewhere in there. And I would work to try to find programs that would work in the jail. And there, I'm telling you, I have talked to people throughout this community, and there are so many people, when you get through talking to them, they say, what can we do to help? From organizations, faith-based organizations, to mental health organizations, they're ready. This community is poised and ready to help, and we need to partner with those folks. It's outside of the box thinking, guys. We got to move towards that.
You're absolutely right. You know, Wayne County is suffering from this drug addiction problem. Let's face it, I talked recently with Coroner Ron Stevens, and last year we had 93 confirmed drug overdose deaths. Now, that wasn't all heroin or fentanyl, carfentanil, but that accounted for all of them. We only had 4 traffic accident deaths last year in comparison. it's a huge issue. And both the gentlemen here are absolutely right. You know, there are many spokes in the wheel. But my approach is, you know, we are a law enforcement agency. We have to be as good at our job as we possibly can. So, and that encompasses a broad spectrum. Part of that is increasing our abilities to investigate these crimes. If we are putting pressure on the dealers and the suppliers, then they're going to start looking for places that's just a little bit easier to peddle their wares. So I'm going to bring in federal and state assets to help us accomplish that. They're going to be able to provide equipment and manpower resources to help us in our investigative efforts. In addition, we're going to educate our officers and develop them professionally in the realm of drug interdiction and enhance their abilities to investigate these crimes and run interdiction on these supplies that are coming in. In fact, Sheriff Kappa has allowed me to start a part of that program already this year with our canine officers. I've directed them to have dedicated, specific time to do nothing more than interdiction when staffing is available, and the numbers have been outstanding. They have doubled the amount of drugs that drug arrests and the amount that they've taken off the street. In fact, this past weekend they got 2 significant arrests. They made 2 significant seizures and are applying for arrest warrants in both of those. We took guns and drugs both off the street. But again, that's only a part of the solution. Treatment programs, we're going to be partnering with them. We've got a number of treatment programs that are already in the jail and are effective. And one of the things that Donnie mentioned was reducing recidivism. And a part of that solution is providing them some of the life skills, some of the people, once they've battled with the addiction issues, once they've made their minds up that they want to move forward, sometimes without the simple things that we don't even think about, life skills issues, if we can provide that to them, then they can come back out into society and they can be productive. They don't have to go back to the ways that they were before. So continuing these programs, monitoring them to make sure they're effective. Another one of those that you mentioned or you had asked about, we have a program called Workforce One, it's Work One, that helps people that are going back into population find jobs, which I think is an incredible resource for them. But in furtherance of that, and to finish up, the community policing and partnering with the community, providing public education, because again, you're absolutely right, the community wants to help, they're ready to help, poised to jump on this issue, but they just don't know how. And we're going to be there to provide that for them and the tools that they need.
Brian's got a follow-up?
Yes, in hearing each of your answers, I think it might be fair to say that you would admit I don't have all the answers because this is a very complex problem. But 2 of you mentioned that there are many spokes in the wheel, and I think it's fair and good that you admit that I don't have all the answers. But my question is, having recognized that, who do you consult with? Who do you bring to your table to help provide guidance, direction, and also so that you understand who are some of the other advocates in our community that are in a position and have the power to help work with you? Because I think most of us agree you need to take the lead on it, but understanding I need help. So who is that?
Who would we bring to the table would
right.
be our
Who do you
community.
consult with? Who is your advisor? And then also, who helps you in this effort?
Well, I think there's many advisors that you could seek in this problem because there, like everybody discussed, there are many spokes in the wheel, so you're going to have to find advisors medically, financially, and you're going to have to find out, look around, see what's working other places. There are programs in the state of Indiana that are working. There's a county smaller than our county and a county larger than our county that have reduced the recidivism rates in their jails by instituting an outside of the box substance abuse program. When I worked in the jail, and Todd and I worked in the jail 30 years ago, we had a cell block that was dedicated to substance abuse. And it was controversial at that time. They had the people that were going through the program in the jail, they had a counselor that came in and talked to them on a regular basis. They had certain privileges that they were allowed to have. They were in a cell block that wasn't locked down, for one. Once a week, they brought pizzas in to those guys that were in that cell block. It was offered 30 years ago. And we are in the middle of a crisis now like never before. We really have got to find a way to capitalize on doing that. So the partners that you asked to bring in is going to have to be mental health people. You're going to have medical people. And you're going to have resources like Randy talked about. Because in St. Joe County, they've started a program up there using a program similar to what you were talking about, helping them get a job. When a guy walks out of the jail, if he wants a job and wants help, the factories are begging for people. The place over by the fairgrounds that has the flowers, they're begging for people to work, and they can't get them to work. So if we can offer those, and guys, that's really not a conservative approach to fixing that problem. It's on the other end of the scale. Because what we have been doing by cuffing and stuffing and housing them is not working. It's evident. We've got to change that. And you have to have a measurable formula to do it. You're going to have to know where you are when you start a program, and then where you are 6 months, a year down the road. And to do that, you've got to collect the data and know where you're at. And by doing that, you will know if you're successful or not. So there's going to be many people, Brian, that are going to have to come in and help. But I'm telling you, I spoke over 100 speaking engagements last year in the city of Richmond alone. And there are people out there who beg to help. What can we do to help? We got to capitalize on that. We're not going to fix it. These guys aren't going to fix it without the help of the community.
And that's true. The community is our resource, and it just depends. If we're only looking for a resource to help with the addiction problem, we have a lot of resources available here. We have a number of different programs, from evidence-based to faith-based programs that we can reach out to and partner with. But we have to look at all of the facets. Like I mentioned earlier, I have plans rather, to bring in state and federal resources to help us in our investigative effort. And I'm not talking about targeting the user. My main focus is the supply. If we can cut that supply off and put more effort into that, then it's going to make it more difficult for it to continue to evolve here. My goal is, by partnering with the community, state and federal resources, is that we can create an environment here. And believe me, when you have the community that's up in arms about this situation, we're going to create an environment where the drug culture just simply does not want to exist here.
And I agree with both these guys, but the big point here is we can't fix ourselves. We cannot arrest ourselves out of this problem. Can't be done. We have to collaborate with our prosecutors, our probation, our community corrections, and the community. There are several community resources, drug-free Wayne County, educational classes. And that's one thing we have not touched on. When I talked about getting rid of the demand for drugs, educational process is keep the kids away from drugs. We have a DARE program that's focused on 5th and 6th grade. By the time they get to high school, they might forget all about that. The peer pressures are greater once we get to high school. We used to have 2 DARE officers committed to the education of our kids on drugs. We only have 1 now. We need to make that a priority again to do that. So we have to have education from not only within the department, but outside of the department as well. And there's several resources we can hit on. Can we fix the problem ourselves? No, we can't. Can we drive out drugs? I'm not sure about that. Years ago, it used to be you have a few big drug dealers in Richmond. You'd arrest them, it would settle down a little bit. Now the drugs are so available, you have somebody who gets arrested for dealing drugs, there's somebody to take its place. The supply of drugs is always going to be there. The key is getting the people who are addicted off the drugs and preventing our youth and young adults from being addicted.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11, speaking with candidates for the Republican Party, Wayne County Sheriff. Before we leave the drug scene, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to ask you all to kind of keep your answers short. Told you it wasn't going to last long. We're almost halfway through. As Wayne County Sheriff, obviously, even as law enforcement officers right now, you all have the ear of our state legislators. But as the Wayne County Sheriff, that probably gets elevated a little bit. There are states all around the country that are beginning to legalize marijuana. Medical marijuana is becoming more and more prevalent. At some point, if you're sitting in that chair, the state legislators are going to ask you your thought. Your thought. What do they need to do? Medical marijuana, legalizing marijuana.
Everything has to be governed. And there are many states who have medical marijuana and legalized marijuana. I'm not sure it's my position to legalize marijuana. Have I seen people who have been administered marijuana medically and be effective for them? Absolutely. And the key is abuse. What is abuse level of the marijuana? It's just like alcohol. Alcohol is not illegal, but yet if you consume too much of it, you drive with it, it becomes illegal. Same thing with small amounts of marijuana or medical marijuana. Medical marijuana, if it helps the person and it's administered properly and guidelines are set place, I'm for medical marijuana. I don't think for legalizing marijuana, I think we're opening a whole can of worms if we start doing that.
Donnie?
I'm absolutely not in favor of legalizing marijuana for recreational use. But just some personal experiences with family and friends that have issues where CBD oil and medical marijuana would absolutely help in issues such as fibromyalgia, certain seizure disorders. It's being utilized, and I think we need to take advantage of that. So medical marijuana, yes. Recreational use of marijuana, absolutely not.
Randy?
I'm not going to be able to really add to this. It sounds like we're all along the same line.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I see no purpose for legalizing recreational marijuana. There are people, and I've had the opportunity to speak with a number of veterans groups that deal with significant pain management issues and other cancer patients and things where this could be a benefit to them. So I would not be opposed to the medical marijuana, legalization of medical marijuana, as long as it's controlled. There are things there that make it less or non-addictive. So that I think that's something that lends to the fact that it could be a viable solution. So again, no for legalization of recreational use, and yes for medical.
And before we leave this, I thought we were done, but the question came in, so we're going to go to that Jack question. Narcan is a large expense to taxpayers. What is your opinion on its use by your department? I lost where we are. I think Donnie goes. Nope, Randy,
I'll take it.
go.
So Narcan can be expensive. We've been very fortunate that Reed Hospital, a nonprofit organization, has been supplying that for our department. And in time, I'm sure that we will start assuming that cost. But if you look at things like the AED machines that we use to revive somebody, they're very expensive as well. So it's another life-saving tool. It's incredibly important that we keep that life-saving tool as a police officer, because we're continuously have the potential for exposure to the officers. In fact, there was a jail in Ohio that recently had an incident where they were booking someone in. As they were patting them down, a container or package dropped out of their pocket. It hit the ground. A little puff of powder came up. As the officers reached down to pick it up, they were exposed. So it's incredibly important to keep that in as a first aid measure. And it's difficult for us as first responders to make a determination on whether or not that person deserves life-saving effort. If somebody's having a heart attack, I don't judge them for their lifestyles. I'm going to perform CPR on that person and save their life. If they made a bad choice and they ran through a red light because they were in a hurry to get to work and they get hit by another vehicle and are seriously injured, I'm still going to try to save their life. It's not up to me to judge. I think we have this simple and effective tool that we can help with this drug problem that we have here in Wayne County. I know we talked some time ago about if somebody came into our community, and I think this is something that Donnie mentioned, and we're killing people in our community, wouldn't we do something about it? And if we have a simple tool, just like Narcan, to be able to save that person, then we should use it. But it goes beyond that. We can't just stop at saving their lives and drive away. We have to continue and follow up with that. And that's why I think it's very important for us to support, just like you were mentioning earlier, that we do have the ear of the legislature. If we support and pursue such legislation as Senate Bill 499, which is coming up, that addresses specifically those that are in addiction, and it mandates treatment for those that we see that are suffering from addiction or at risk. Those are the types of follow-up things that we need to pursue in addition to the use of Narcan.
And I gotta be honest with you, when Sheriff Cappa first brought the Narcan to us, and I was not in favor of it. I don't think many of our officers were. You know, we looked at it as we're not medical staff. We're not. We should not be giving. We're police officers. We should not be administering medication. Since then, I've been on numerous calls where I have administered Narcan myself. And like Randy said, we don't judge. We have a job to do, and it's save a life, and that's what we do. What we have to look at is the person doesn't always make the choice whether they're going to take drugs or not. The first time, maybe yes, but then they're addicted and it's the disease. So we have to help them get off that disease. The problem we're having is when we were first given Narcan, we had one dose. And people's immune system got so big that I've seen 5 and 6 doses given at a time. So I might give a dose, but I have to wait for someone else to come to start administering more doses to bring them back out, reverse the process. Now, like Randy said, Reed Hospital is a great supplier, and I have 5 doses that I carry with me in my police unit. So we don't judge, but this is another perfect time, because as we all know, majority of people who overdose, they wake up and they're either mad because you ruined their high, but they don't go to jail because whoever's calling in has already taken care of all the evidence. So then it becomes a medical issue. They just either don't get transported at all or they get transported and released. So this is another opportunity for us to help the person who is addicted. If we are armed with the information, like I talked about earlier, give them the information. Will they use it? Who knows? But they might. So we need to do that as well after the Narcan's administered, try to help them out, get off the addiction.
Eric, it's unsettling for everybody, and it's uncomfortable for the 3 of us to sit here and talk about we are at a point in time in society where law enforcement officers are administering Narcan. We are at a point in time, Randy said, we're over 90 overdose deaths. There were 70 some the year before, 56 the year before that. People are dying. Again, being out in the community, talking to people, you'll get some people that'll come up and say, we shouldn't be giving people the Narcan. And my response back is, if it's your daughter laying there, would you want me making the decision? So agreeing with these guys on this is, it's unsettling, but we have to do it. You know, we're not going to stand by and watch somebody pass away with Narcan because of not using Narcan. During one of these conversations I had a guy in the room telling me, no, we shouldn't be doing that, and he was very adamant about it. On the other side of the room, a guy stood up and said that he had lost 2 kids in the last 6 months to overdoses. The bottom line is, it's unsettling, it's uncomfortable, but we have to do it. It's the changing times, it's the hand that's been dealt. And as we move away from heroin and we start moving back towards the meth and the crack cocaine, you may see the use of Narcan diminish. But right now, we are in the midst of that. Our drug task force is buying about 50% methamphetamine now and versus heroin. So it's swinging back.
In furtherance of one thing that Todd said, he talked about giving information to the persons that's addictive. I've been looking at a program that's been proven to be successful in Ohio that it's a rapid action response to an overdose. So if an officer goes in or medical goes in and they treat someone for an overdose and they're successful, they have representatives from law enforcement, fire and EMS, or social services that are able to come in and to provide them with that information. So they're able to get them in contact with the people that they can get them the addiction problems, and they don't just they're not just looking to talk to the person that's addicted. They also want to talk to the family, because oftentimes the family is a big support and a big motivator for that individual to get the help that they want. And the families do want to help, but they may not have those tools. So I'm really looking hard at this program. We've started talks, or I have started talks with some of the people that may be interested, and we'll go from there.
And Donnie is right in saying that we need to save all lives. You hear so many times that drug abuse is a victimless crime because they're just doing it to themselves. I don't know of anybody, and probably these guys have, where drug abuse has affected somebody they know. I personally have had a second cousin die of overdose, age of 18. Is his mom and dad a victim? Absolutely. You know, everybody we save is somebody's son, mother, daughter, aunt, or uncle. So it is important that we save everybody we can.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum, Whitewater Community Television, WGTV Channel 11, speaking with Todd Barker, Donnie Benedict, Randy Rutter, candidates for Wayne County Sheriff. Brian Ballinger is with me representing our partners, the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. We've got some questions backed up from the viewing audience, so we're going to get a couple of those in, and we're going to ask you to shorten your answers just a little bit so that we can get some more of these questions in. What's the first one up? The patrolman's responsibilities are hampered by micromanagement currently. What can be done to remedy this problem in the future? And I'm assuming that I'm reading that correctly, even though that's not quite what's there. Okay. The patrolman's responsibilities are hampered by micromanagement currently. What can be done to remedy this problem in the future? I'm not quite sure where that's coming from, but talk about, I guess, your management style, how you let people do their job. And I think we're
I'll
here.
go with it.
Go for
Why
it.
not? Okay. Law enforcement, there's nothing black and white. You have to use your discretion, your years of experience to make decisions. You have to make them quickly. I assume what they're talking about is, and we talked about earlier, is our policies and procedures. You know, it's written down in policy, this is what we need to do. However, we also need to deviate from those policies when we make a incorrect decision. And we should not be in trouble, I guess if you would say, or look over our back like, yeah, I made a good arrest, but I did not follow the policy correctly. So, and we recently, last month, had someone come in from Indiana University and talk about this very topic, about the policies and the different type of managers. And he talked about a boss. What does a boss do? And what a boss does, he categorized, is they follow the policies black and white to the T. You don't deviate from those policies, and that is a boss. Then he talked about the other category, which you can deviate from those policies a little bit. As long as you get the job done correctly and the outcome is great, we will back you up. And that is a leader. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going to be a leader to deviate from the policies a little bit, let the guys use their discretion, let them make good judgment and good faith, and I will back them up for that.
The leadership style in law enforcement is got to be flexible. We are not turning bolts or nuts with a wrench to a certain setting on an assembly line. Not every call is the same. Not every situation is the same. It's different day by day. My management style and leadership is that I would encourage and foster ideas, create ownership in the department. If you have a say and you value the opinions of the people that are working in the department, they'll take ownership in it. It's like polishing up a new car. They'll make it shine, they'll make it good. It's self-feeding. When they have ownership in the department and they move forward and they're making good decisions, it benefits everybody. It benefits morale, it benefits the citizens that we serve. Encourage creative thinking. Let's utilize the talent that we got. Let's capitalize on that. Let's encourage it. Let's foster that. Let's grow that. Grow that within the organization. And the benefits will come to you tenfold. You have to do that. Foster that.
And my leadership style also is participative. I encourage participation from the people that I lead to provide ideas and solutions to different problems. But I think one of the things that Todd was mentioning or talking about was policies. The policies don't micromanage the individual. They are a basic direction and guidance for that person, and the policies that we have established in the Wayne County Sheriff's Department are based on professional accreditation, and the standards that we have to compare our policies with in professional accreditation are based on the best practices in law enforcement in the United States. It's not my idea of how things should be done. It's not their idea of how things should be done. This is a conglomeration of the best practices in the United States. And that provides you, the citizen, the taxpayer, with the best service possible. We're not trying to tell everybody how they need to do their traffic stops. We may tell them how to write their tickets when they do a traffic stop, but we're not telling them how to do them. So it's not really micromanagement, and it protects the officers when they're doing it this way because, again, these are tried and true techniques and methods that are based on a national-wide conglomerate of the best practices in law enforcement.
There's probably 2 or 3 follow-ups there. There's one that came in from a viewer, I think, so we'll go with that. Sorry. Next question. What are some of your goals that you would like to achieve over the next 4 years for the Sheriff's Department if elected as sheriff? What are some of your goals that you would like to achieve over the next 4 years if you're elected as sheriff? Donnie.
Well, I would like to create and establish a partnership and engage this community like we've never done before. We need to reach out. I mentioned before that when we go out and we talk to people and you ask them what the #1 problem is in this community, everybody's got the answer, but no one knows what we're doing. We need to go out and let these people know. We need to reduce the recidivism rates in the jail. We need to target the most prolific and persistent offenders that we can. And we need to break down informational silos between agencies and within the department. Those goals together will improve quality of life and reduce the social harm that we have here. We keep talking about overdoses and drug dealers and stuff, but there is social harm associated with that goes far beyond drug dealers and overdoses. And we need, as sheriff, we need to capitalize on that as being a community leader and going out and encouraging, cherishing the information, and sharing ideas with this community. It's, again, we're not going to solve this problem. Neither one of these guys sitting here, we're going to be able to solve this without the community's help. And we have got to engage this community. I'm telling you, they are poised to help. I hear it every time I speak.
3 major areas that I have that I want to deal with is, #1 is my goal is to continue with department-wide accreditation. We're accredited on the enforcement division, in the jail, and in the jail medical. And again, I think this provides the best foundation for us to provide you, the taxpayers, the best possible service. The other issues, like we talked about before, I had developed a comprehensive drug plan to drive drugs out of Wayne County, and I'm going to enact that and put that as a priority. We have to stop these deaths. And as a part of that, and another major component is the community policing aspect. And fortunately, I've been able to start under Sheriff Kappa's administration. I've been able to start part of that program this summer. And we're going to see more police officers out in the community. They're going to be not there on a response. They're going to be out there trying to engage in the community, speak with them, share information, and begin that relationship.
Todd?
One of our number one problems is we need to make the Wayne County Sheriff's Department an employer where people want to come and work. Right now we are short-staffed. Our jail has not been fully staffed since 2008. And that's a huge liability, since 2008. Last year alone, I do all pre-employment polygraphs for the Sheriff's Department. Last year alone, I conducted 44 pre-employment polygraphs. If you think about that, how many processes are we doing? It's continuing. That takes away jail staff, it takes away enforcement staff who have background checks. We have monies going into each of the processes. It's a continuing cycle. And same thing for the road division. Over the last 6 years, we've had 17 new road enforcement officers. Again, they have to go. Once they get hired, it's a year before they are out on their own. Again, and that's an issue for our public, that they're not getting the services they deserve, and it puts more stress on each officer. There was 2 summers ago, we were very short-handed. We had the minimum of 3 guys working the road. They weren't allowed to have vacations unless they traded with somebody because we were so short-staffed. We need to make Wayne County a great place to work. It's going to lower our tax dollars because we're not continually putting money into hiring processes. It's going to free up people like me. Instead of doing polygraphs, I can be out in the public and helping them out. It's going to free up people who are doing background checks. So if we get fully staffed, make it a great place to work, it's going to benefit the community because we have more resources, more police officers on the street.
Okay. Brian, you've been sitting quietly, patiently.
Yes, I have.
Let's go with your next question.
Todd, I think you will be next, and I'll take part of your last answer as the next lead-in. Your focus, it sounds like, would be on staffing levels. So my question is, and I'm going to kind of switch directions here completely, are you satisfied with the level of diversity in the department currently? And if not, how would you approach that so that you would increase diversity? Because obviously that is also a lead-in to your question, how do we make this a great place to work? Obviously that's a concern for me from the chamber standpoint.
Right. Yes, it is a big concern. And I've never understood how the Richmond City Police Department can get so many females hired and we cannot hire a female. Currently we have 1, and for many years we had 0. And we do need more female officers. We need more of every aspect. We need people who are bilingual. We can't get those people. The Hispanic community is huge anymore. It's not just in Richmond, it's everywhere. So we do need diversity in our department. And how are we going to make that happen? It's again making Wayne County attractive. And we're going the steps. Everybody wants to blame low pay. Everyone wants to blame low pay for everything. We finally brought that up a little bit from the bottom, so that the pay is getting there. And it's a small step. They're still working on getting the pay level up even higher. But we also have to have a managerial style that people want to work for. I've talked to people in the past that have left our department, and they say they can work for high pay and not so good management. They can work for great management and not so good pay, but they can't work for both. So we need to make good management and attract the people, the diversity of people, to help the citizens of Wayne County.
Several years ago, our department went and we actually did actively recruiting at college campuses and throughout East Central Indiana, Ball State, IU, Ivy Tech. The problem that we have is, and he touched on it, that's the bottom line. If you're going to be a police officer, and if you're qualified to be a police officer in this county, you are qualified to be a police officer elsewhere. And you can drive 40 minutes east, west, or north of here and make $15,000 to $20,000 a year more than either one of these two departments can supply. The example is with the Richmond Police Department, we had 8 positions opened. We had 35 applicants. When I hired on, there were 4 positions, and we tested over at the auditorium at the high school with over 200 people for 4 positions. The problem is attracting the people here. We have to find ways to do so. And when you're offering up a salary of $42,000, and you can go to Wendy's and be the assistant manager and make more than that and not put your life on the line, it is an issue. It is pay, is a big, and benefits is a big attraction. We all look at that, whether we want to admit it or not. That is what we look at when we go out and look for a job. Industry here, unemployment's bouncing at that 4 to 3% range here in Wayne County now. That's almost fully employed. We've got a factory going in out here that makes dog food that's going to pay people more than what our starting salaries are for law enforcement. It's priority in spending, and it is nice to have good management to work with. Somebody that invites you, makes it attractive to be there. Somebody you want to work for. And that's the goal. I mean, and it's tough. It's not just tough for this agency, it's tough for the police department. We've been chasing that ball for a long time, and we're still chasing it. I think we're still 2 or 3 officers down.
I want to bring us back to the diversity question. I think we've kind of got sidetracked a bit. So our county is made up, I think, 17% minority, I think, is the actual total. And we need to be a representative of our community. There's no question about that. One of the great things about professional accreditation, it gives us guidance on issues like ethics and diversity, and I think that's very important as a top-down kind of idea, not just an idea, but a way of operating. But my plan to increase diversity would be to reach out to those groups, NAACP and other interest groups, to try to help recruit. They know the people that are needing those jobs. They know the people that are qualified, and they can help us recruit those people. And I think partnering with them is essential because I really want to start here in Wayne County and try to recruit the people. There's eligible people right here. And if we can't find the people here, then obviously we need to go outside. But I think we need to start here and invest in our community.
Go ahead. The problem with what we're talking about here is attracting the people. You cannot solve the diversity issue if you can't attract the people. A qualified minority applicant is going to be able to go get a job at a more attractive place. We have got to find ways to make this a more attractive place to work. We have to, whether it's quality of life issues that we deal with, whether it's pay, whether it's style of management. We have to do that. Randy's right. We have to seek out those people locally. We're starting a unique cadet program with the Richmond Police Department. We are taking them and bringing them in. We're going to use it as an educational basis, and we plan on bringing those people through to the point. If they stay with us from 16 to 20, they stay with us at full time. At 21, we're going to move them into a reserve position, and they'll be eligible to test for a professional position. Okay, we are grooming and going after those folks that have roots here, because that's who are the people that are going to stay here. Okay, they're going to stay here, and it's going so far to the point is that there's conversations about if they do this program, they may get an extra point or something on their testing procedures when they get ready to hire in. We give prior military bonuses on that testing procedure. We give prior law enforcement. If we recruit locally, bring them into this group, I think we can help solve some of that.
And I want to touch on something Donnie was saying, and it's very true. The problem we're having is applications. When we came on, we grew up probably wanting to be police officers. A few years ago that was, but now people don't want to be police officers. They look at what we have to deal with. They look at everything is scrutinized as a police officer. And their mindset is, for that pay, why would I go be a police officer in that danger? Why would I be a police officer where I can go into a factory and make the same amount of money, if not more?
More.
Let me try a follow-up. Talk to us. If you can't bring diversity, and we'll bring this down, race, to the police departments here, then talk to me about how you train your officers about the bias that's out there. And we'll take it to Philadelphia last weekend. Not saying the officers did anything wrong. The manager called because two people were sitting there. Two black gentlemen were sitting there. The police have been used against people of color for a long time. How do you train your officers to find ways around that as they stop people on the road, think about who they're profiling, think about the crimes that are being committed? You will be at the top. And you've all said there's a diversity problem within the force. Talk to me about then how you talk to your officers about how they interact with people of color.
If you'd like me to go first, that's great. We actually do have policy that deals specifically with that. And if I remember correctly, our policy number is 1.2.9. We just went through the accreditation process, and that was one of the policies that I helped review. What that provides is for annual training on ethics, and it also provides for the management, the administration, to track. I mentioned earlier about we tell our officers how to write their traffic citations. Part of what we track in that is making sure that we have gender and race filled out on the traffic citations, which has been historically optional. But we're mandating that be done so we can track that to monitor, to make sure that the training is effective and policies are being followed. It's an important administrative tool for us to do that. I'm not aware of any intentional issues by any of the people in our department, but as good management, we have to track those issues to make sure that something doesn't start to turn the other direction.
What we're talking about is implicit bias, and it's a subconscious bias that we have. And I was resistant to that because I said, that's not me, until I had implicit bias training. And then I realized just how bad it is. You have to have that training. Implicit bias training is a key, and it has to not just be trained once, it has to be maintained and reinforced. And implicit bias training and policies, or whatever numbers that you're quoting in your policies with ethics, without the implicit bias training, you have to bring that to the forefront of your mind, man, when you're dealing with that. And I've said, there's no way. This is not going to apply to me. And about 30 minutes into it, I realized it did. It was eye-opening, jaw-dropping. So implicit bias training is one of the elements that I would insist that all the agency staff would deal with, including the jail staff and administrative staff.
And I agree wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, we all see color. It's a learned behavior. We see color. Whether we want to admit it or not, we see color. If I make a traffic stop, and we have training, we all mandated training for this topic, but that doesn't mean it's going to carry over into every officer. And the same thing with Randy talking about policies. If I make a traffic stop, I'm not going to pull up a policy and say, this is what I should do here. You know, it goes back to my training, and I'm going to act on my training. Everybody needs to be treated the same. It's the action of the person that dictates whether we act differently, not the color of skin, how we act differently. And that is, like they talk about, intensive training is what that's going to take. Everybody needs to be treated the same. I think at a large-scale city, you're seeing a lot more than you are here. I've not heard of any complaints. You know, I had a meet and greet. I had a lady asking me, how can I be stopped by a police officer and know that I'm not going to get shot? That's a big statement, huge statement. And my answer to her is, act like a normal person. Just act, do what the officer asks. That's all you got to do. It's the reaction of the person inside the vehicle that makes us start acting a different way. It's not the color of their skin that makes us start acting a different way. But as Donnie said, training, we have to have everybody trained the same to try to get past that. I see color. everybody's a person instead of black or white.
Do you understand and can you help train that the reason there is a different action is because of the interactions that have happened in the past?
And I understand that. And I can't speak for everybody. I can speak of how I treat people. I treat people how they treat me. And it's always been that way. When I worked in the jail, I treat people how they treat me. That's why when I see next inmate on the street, it's, "Hey Todd, how you doing?" You know, they'll go up and give me a hug. I don't even know what they were charged with. Everybody's treated the same. And that's what we have to get through the minds of every officer, is to treat everybody as they are a person and not color or not age, because that happens as well. Not what they drive. We cannot judge people just on how they look, their appearances. And we have to get that through the mindset of everyone.
Go.
Eric, you spoke about the interaction with police, and maybe that's a reason some people react differently if we engage them or encounter them in a law enforcement setting. I guarantee you, the three of us, we had a positive interaction with law enforcement when we were younger. Right now, we've got kids that are witnessing the opposite, and they're growing up that way. Matter of fact, they're being encouraged to be defiant for law enforcement. At a young age, when a kid is so impressionable and their interaction with law enforcement was not positive like ours, it was negative, man, that is a big imprint on that person's ability to understand and to develop their responses when we deal with them at a later age. They're so impressionable at that age, and if it's been a negative experience because of whatever the case may be, domestic violence or CPS issues where we have to remove a child out of the home, there's so much of that going on right now. These kids are being imprinted with a negative opinion of law enforcement. And we got to understand that. Again, it's unsettling that we have to deal with that, but man, it's hard for us to understand, because I know the three of us had positive. Our first interaction with law enforcement was positive. I mean, I can remember it. My dad took me to the donut shop in Hagerstown, and before school, when he got off work, and Dave Riley was the sheriff's deputy. He'd come down and he would sit down with me and talk to me, and I looked up to that guy forever. It was amazing. So we have to understand that not everybody's interaction in law enforcement has been positive, especially at a young age.
Yeah, part of my plan and platform that I've developed and ran on for the last year is professional development and continued professionalism of our agency. And part of that professional development will speak to the question that you had asked about, can you make the differentiation based on that person's reaction based on their experience with prior experiences with law enforcement. And de-escalation training is one of the new waves of training in law enforcement that I intend to incorporate into our training regime for our department. De-escalation training, I think, will help us and deal with those types of situations, to be able to communicate with that person and have a productive outcome in that contact.
Going real quick back to what Donnie was talking about, our influences when we were kids. And it breaks my heart. I know you guys have heard it too. I have 2 teenage girls. They've never heard me use the word arrest. If you ask them growing up, what does daddy do? He helps people. We go into a grocery or somewhere else, you see a small child, if they're acting up, what's mom and dad say? Behave or he's going to arrest you. And that's already putting the fear into the kid. Again, we talk about learned behaviors. That's where learned behavior is coming from. Now we deal with juveniles. I would much rather not arrest a juvenile, but let the parents deal with it. But now we're seeing the parents taking the side of the juvenile, and they're not going to do anything about it. It's more of, what proof do you have that my kid did something? So we go back to the learned behaviors of police are bad. And that's, again, we need to get over that stereotype as well.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11. You're almost out of here, gentlemen. 9 minutes, actually. I think we have another chat question that we need to try to get to, and then Todd has our wrap-up, so we're going to ask you to kind of move through this pretty quickly. Would you take the necessary steps to keep the accreditation that was recently accomplished through much hard work? I think you've talked about this, that it's there, you're for it, and you'll keep it up, I assume.
Yes, I will, Eric. And you know, again, we talked about it earlier. These are guidelines based on the best practices in law enforcement. How can you deny that this isn't the appropriate solution and best way to guide and lead our department to provide you with the best service possible? It's as simple as that. These are things that protect the officers and they protect the community and help us in our day-to-day operations. And it's not just a matter of saying that we're going to adopt this policy or we're going to say that we have this. We have to prove that we're following these policies. Just like the policy on the ethics and bias-based profiling that we talked about earlier. We have to be able to prove that we're actually following them in order to maintain that accreditation. So there's follow-through, there's accountability, and we're accountable to you as a citizen to provide you the best possible service. So yes, I'm absolutely in favor of continuing accreditation at every level in our department.
First of all, this is not the first time our sheriff's department's been accredited. Many people don't realize that Sheriff Andrews did the same thing, and it fell through the wayside over the years. Accreditation policies are very important, absolutely agree. But it can't be sacrificed. You know, Randy says, get the best possible service for our community. And I'm not saying I'm going to do with accreditation because I'm not. I love accreditation, I love our policies, we need them. But we also have one person assigned to accreditation only. That's taken away from our police force when we have one person assigned to do this. You know, and I want to evaluate why does it take one person to do this when we went through the accreditation process to get it started. We had one guy in charge of accreditation. He was a DARE officer. He was in charge of sex crimes. You know, he did 3 different things, and he did our training. He did 4 different things, and now all of a sudden we have one person doing this. So that needs to be evaluated. The process there is great, but we need to try to figure out why it's taking one person at $45,000 a year to our county for accreditation only. We need to be utilized in many other ways as well.
Our department went through an accreditation process several years ago as well through CLIA. Accreditation is fine as long as you are following the accreditation. If you're going to spend $45,000 for that a year and the amount of time and money that you spent in that to hang the certificate on the wall, then you darn well better be following the accreditation issues. Because if you're not going to follow them, it does no good to be accredited. If you're just going to get prepared for the audits, when the audits come around, and you go out and you interview and you talk to the officers that are, and I'm speaking for us, not the Sheriff's Department, if those accreditation policies were not being followed except the time of the audits, then what good was that piece of paper hanging on the wall?
Is it something that you believe in and will keep?
As long as it's evaluated and the policies and procedures are followed, it would be something worth keeping.
Okay. All right.
I had a lot of questions, not able to get through all of it, but I appreciate your involvement and engagement. I appreciate the answers. I'll be honest, I wanted to hear a little bit more about how we would tackle diversity. I hopefully you all are aware of it, and in fact, I'll share this. Eric mentioned before the show, let's say, for example, if we had an incident that involved someone between a law enforcement officer and a minority. The current climate, I'll say, of the makeup of the department now, in a national sense, probably wouldn't look very favorable on us as a community. So I think it's something that I hopefully that you're aware of, and I'd enjoy hearing more about maybe later.
Before we bail, I think they told me 5 minutes. I didn't hear exactly what they said. We're going to go around real quickly. I know you introduced yourselves. Tell us, because there's 3 of you, tell us why you should be Wayne County Sheriff. What do you bring to the table that should put you in that seat?
With me first? Okay. I'll bring to the table a sheriff that can walk in on January 1 if elected, a sheriff candidate that has no strings attached. I will be able to walk into there, fresh eyes, to be able to look at the same problems that we're talking about here today, and be in a position to be able to make those changes. I'm the outside-of-the-box thinker. I will look for creative ways to do so. It's a lifelong passion, ever since those days when I was little, to be the sheriff of Wayne County. This is my one-time shot at doing it. I'm here, and I'm going to make the best of it. I've got the passion for it. I've got the education for it. I've definitely got the experience. And I believe that I can bring to the table to improve the quality of life here in the county, improve the quality of life of the people that would be working with me in the Sheriff's Department, and to move this county forward and to build on what is already there. I don't believe that I would take a position where there will not be a disruption of service. It will be a seamless transition of power if someone outside of the Sheriff's Department is elected. In fact, the vast number of law enforcement agencies and correctional facilities hire their top executive from outside the agency.
Okay, gotta catch you off.
And I hear what Donnie's saying. I do disagree with that a little bit. But what I want to say is I've worked for our department for 22 years. And I have been in or with just about every position on the department. I know this department inside and out. And I've made sacrifices along the way that come with the leadership roles that I have attained through the merit processes. And this is why exactly I think that Sheriff Kappa has endorsed me to be the next sheriff. Without his confidence in my abilities, I don't think he would have done that. So my passion is there. I think it shows in the answers that I've given you today. And the one thing I want you to remember is vote Randy Redder in May.
Todd?
Sure. What do I bring that the other guys don't? First of all, the Sheriff's Department is enforcement division, jail division. You know, I worked 6 years in the jail. I did not leave the jail to go somewhere else to build a career. I remember having an interview with Dennis Andrews. I was offered the same position that Donnie was to move to RPD. He said, your place is with Wayne County. And I stayed with Wayne County. I spent 6 years in the jail. Randy's never worked in the jail. I have the jail experience. You know, I was corporal, I was a sergeant, I was a transport officer. I know how the jail works, first of all. Then building on to what can I bring to enforcement division? I've held many positions, patrolman, polygraphic examiner, detective, and some of these guys have not done that. Specialize in crimes against children. Our children are our future. You know, I understand that. I've built relations with our community already. I built relations with the probation department. I built relations with the prosecutor's office. Obviously, Prosecutor Mike Shipman is endorsing me. He believes me. He wants a partner he can count on.
And I have to cut you off there. Todd Barker, Donnie Benedict, Randy Redder, thank you very much. Appreciate you putting your names on the ballot and going after this. Brian, thank you for being here representing the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. We greatly appreciate it. I want to remind you real quickly about the candidate forum where you can get more of your questions answered on Tuesday at 6:30 at the Cambridge City Public Library. Thank you very much for watching this week's In Focus Candidate Forum. We'll be back next Thursday evening at 6 p.m. as we talk with candidates for Wayne County Council District 3. Have a good night.